Welcome back to another deep dive into Fallout's darkest secrets. Today, we are exploring something the Wasteland has never seen coming. What if I told you the ocean is not empty? What if everything you thought you knew about the post-war world was incomplete because you were only seeing half the picture? Imagine discovering that while surface survivors were fighting over clean water and canned beans, millions of people were thriving in pressurized cities on the ocean floor. That the Mirelurks were never natural mutations, that the fog in Far Harbor is not weather, that coastal violence is not random, that everything happening near the water is part of a plan 2 centuries in the making, that the ocean has been watching the Wasteland for generations, preparing for the day it rises up and takes everything. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. Now, let us descend into the deep water where the real nightmare has been waiting all along. The oxygen alarm started screaming 3 hours ago, and I stopped caring about it 2 hours and 45 minutes back. When you have spent your entire life breathing recycled air processed through filtration systems that pull oxygen from seawater, you develop a certain relationship with the sound of impending suffocation. It becomes background noise, like the hum of geothermal generators or the creak of reinforced titanium under 30 million tons of pressure. My name does not matter anymore. What matters is that I am transmitting this from a research vessel I stole from Substation Echo, somewhere in the Atlantic Trench, running dark at 300 meters while hunter units sweep the thermal layers above me. They have been searching for 6 months. They will find me eventually. They always do. I need you to understand something before I go any further. Everything you think you know about the ocean after the Great War is wrong. You surface dwellers, you wasteland survivors, you think the seas are empty, except for mirelurks and maybe some mutated fish. You think the worst thing down here is radiation and the occasional irradiated crab the size of a car. You have no idea. There are cities down here, real cities, functioning settlements with populations in the tens of thousands, powered by geothermal vents that have been running since before your great-grandparents were born. I am not talking about vault tech experiments or pre-war bunkers that got flooded. I am talking about purpose-built underwater research facilities that survived everything. The bombs, the radiation, the collapse of civilization, all of it. They call it the network. 17 major stations scattered across the Atlantic Ridge, the Marianas Trench, the Pacific thermal zones. Each one is a self-contained ecosystem, pressurized habitats connected by transport tubes, powered by thermal converters that pull energy straight from the Earth's core. The radiation from the Great War never reached us. 300 meters of water is better shielding than any vault tech ever built. When the bombs fell on October 23, 2077, the people in these stations barely felt it. A few tremors, some seismic activity. By the time the mushroom clouds cleared, we had already sealed ourselves off from the surface forever. I was born in Station Echo in 2054, 4th-generation network citizen. My great-grandfather was part of the original Poseidon Energy deep-sea research team that established the first thermal stations in 2068. Back then, it was all legitimate. Poseidon needed energy alternatives as the oil fields dried up. They built the stations to study geothermal power, oceanic thermal gradients, deep-sea biology. Then the resource wars started getting serious. China and America began looking at every possible strategic advantage. Poseidon Energy did not just want to study the ocean, they wanted to weaponize it. By 2075, half the research stations had been converted to military projects. I have seen the files. Project Abyssal Recon, Project Deep Strike, biological weapons development using deep-sea organisms as templates. They were engineering creatures that could survive in any environment, that could operate in radiation, that could be deployed along coastlines to deny enemy access. The Mirelurks were never supposed to get out. They were containment failures, early-generation bioweapons that Poseidon Energy was testing in controlled reef environments in 2073. Then some idiot forgot to secure a habitat seal, and suddenly you had breeding populations of armored mutant crustaceans spreading along the entire eastern seaboard. You want to know why Mirelurks appeared so fast after the bombs? They were already there. Poseidon had been releasing test subjects for years, monitoring their spread, their evolution, their aggression patterns. The Nahant Oceanological Society tried to stop it. They published reports about the mutations, about the unnatural changes in coastal ecosystems. Poseidon buried them. By the time the bombs fell, there were already breeding colonies from Maine to Florida. The radiation just made them bigger, meaner, harder to kill. But the Mirrorlurks were just the beginning. I have worked in the genetics division at Station Echo for 22 years. I have seen what happens when you give scientists unlimited resources, no oversight, and 2 centuries to work with genetic material that was already unstable. The creatures you call fog crawlers? They started as Station 12 prototypes. Gulpers? Station 9. Even the Mirrorlurk Kings, those humanoid things that can scream loud enough to rupture eardrums, those were intentional. We were trying to create amphibious infiltration units that could operate on land and sea. We succeeded, then we lost control. The network kept developing, while you, surface dwellers, were fighting over clean water and canned beans. We were building quantum processors, perfecting matter synthesis, mapping the human genome so thoroughly we could grow replacement organs in 3 weeks. We have technology that makes the Institute look primitive, molecular fabricators that can construct anything from raw minerals, genetic engineering so precise we can code behaviors into organisms before they are even born. Energy systems so efficient we could power the entire Commonwealth for a year on the output from a single thermal vent. You think the Institute's synths are impressive? We have been growing biological constructs for 50 years. Perfect human replicas, engineered from birth for specific tasks. No implants, no synthetic components, just genetics, pushed to its absolute limit. Every station has a genetics lab. Every lab has projects you would not believe if I showed you the files. I started questioning things when I turned 30. I was assigned to Project Sentinel, a research initiative studying coastal settlement patterns. We were not just studying them, we were influencing them. Station Echo had deployed what we called resonance buoys along the northeastern coastline, devices that emitted specific frequency patterns designed to affect human behavior. Low-frequency infrasound that induced paranoia, aggression, territorial violence. We were destabilizing coastal communities on purpose. Why? The official explanation was defensive preparation. Keep the surface populations fragmented and hostile, so they never develop the technology or organization to explore the deep ocean and discover us. The real reason was simpler. The network was preparing for expansion. They wanted the coastlines, all of them, and they did not want to negotiate with the current residents. I have seen the colonization timelines. The Resource Allocation Board has been planning surface operations since 2100. They call it the Emergence Protocol, a staged campaign to establish network authority over all coastal territories from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Mexico. First phase is psychological destabilization through infrasound broadcast. That is already happening. Point Lookout, Far Harbor, the random violence in coastal settlements. That is us. That is the network making sure you are too busy killing each other to notice what is happening in the water. Phase 2 is biological denial. Release modified organisms designed to make coastal areas uninhabitable for normal humans, but perfectly suited for network physiology. We have been engineering amphibious fungi that can process radioactive fog into breathable atmosphere for our lung structure. We have been testing it in Far Harbor for 10 years. The locals think the fog is natural. It is not. That is atmospheric preparation. Within 5 years, the entire northeastern coastline will be covered in fog so thick normal humans will suffocate in 30 minutes. Network citizens will breathe it like fresh air. Phase 3 is direct acquisition. Once the fog is established, network military units will come ashore. Not the monsters you have been seeing, real soldiers. 8,000 trained operatives in powered exosuits designed for amphibious combat. They will secure the coastal settlements, integrate anyone useful into the labor structure, and eliminate everyone else. The timeline says it starts in 2093. That is 6 years from now. I found out because I saw a colleague being prepped for surface infiltration. Dr. Marcus Chen. I had worked with him for 8 years. Good scientist, brilliant geneticist. Then one day, I walked past a medical bay I was not supposed to access, and I saw him on a table getting his lungs modified. They were giving him amphibious respiration, gills grafted into his neck, tissue redesigned to process water and air equally. He was being prepared for long-term surface deployment. When I asked him about it later, He looked at me like I was crazy. He did not remember the procedure. They had scrubbed his memory of it. Neural editing, another network specialty. You can make someone forget entire years of their life with the right cocktail of neurochemicals and targeted electromagnetic pulses. I started paying attention after that, started noticing patterns. Scientists who disappeared for weeks and came back different. Security officers who suddenly had classified assignments they could not discuss. Equipment requisitions that did not match any official research projects. I broke into the Central Archive 3 months before I ran, found the full emergence protocol documentation, 20,000 pages of operational plans, resource projections, contingency scenarios. They were not just planning to take the coastlines. They were planning to replace the entire surface population within 50 years. Network Command had determined that surface dwellers were genetically compromised. Too much radiation, exposure over too many generations. They had classified the entire surface population as biologically obsolete. The plan was extermination disguised as integration. I tried to warn people. I sent an encrypted message to Station 7, where I had friends who I thought might listen. They reported me to security within an hour. I had 12 hours before they came for my cognitive restructuring. That is what they call it when they reprogram you. Cognitive restructuring. They strap you to a neural interface and rewrite your personality until you are compliant. I have seen it done. The person who comes out is not the person who went in. Same body, different mind, obedient, useful, dead inside. I stole Research Vessel 47 from the Echo Dock on March 3rd, 2087 at 0300 hours. I had been planning it for weeks, forged authorization codes, faked maintenance schedules, disabled tracking systems. I made it 200 kilometers before they realized I was gone. By then, I was already running dark, using thermal layers to mask my signature, navigating by dead reckoning through sectors I had memorized from the archive maps. They sent hunter units after me within 6 hours. Autonomous pursuit drones designed to track thermal signatures and biological markers. Each one is equipped with shaped charge warheads and enough processing power to predict evasive maneuvers. I have destroyed 4 of them in the past 6 months. There are at least 6 more still searching. They are patient. They are thorough. They will find me eventually. I have been trying to warn coastal settlements, but no one believes me. I surfaced near a fishing village outside what used to be Portland 3 months ago. Tried to explain what was coming. They thought I was insane. Some wastelander who had spent too long alone, hallucinating about underwater cities and phantom invasions. One of them tried to shoot me. I had to dive and run before they organized a proper attack. The Brotherhood of Steel might listen. They have encountered network technology before without understanding what it was. In 2079, a Brotherhood patrol recovered what they classified as alien technology from a wrecked coastal facility. It was not alien, it was network. An abandoned research station that had suffered a containment breach. The Brotherhood studied it for months, trying to reverse engineer the power systems and biotech components. They gave up because the technology was too advanced. They assumed it was extraterrestrial because they could not conceive of human engineering that sophisticated. But the Brotherhood does not patrol far enough from shore. Their vertibirds do not have the range to reach the deep water stations, and their power armor is not rated for deep sea pressure. I cannot approach their checkpoints without being detected by network surveillance. The hunter drones monitor all major surface installations. If I get within 50 kilometers of a Brotherhood base, they will know. If you are still with me after hearing this, hit that like and subscribe button. I have documented everything. Station locations, technology specifications, genetic engineering protocols, emergence timeline, security codes, everything I could access before I ran. It is all stored on data modules in this vessel's secured compartment. If I do not make it, if the hunter drones find me, the vessel is programmed to surface automatically and broadcast a distress signal on all available frequencies. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe someone will believe it. The worst part about running is not the isolation or the constant fear of being caught. It is the knowledge. I know too much about what is coming, and I am completely powerless to stop it. Every day, I monitor surface broadcasts, listening to reports from coastal settlements about strange fog patterns, unexplained violence, missing people. Every day, I hear confirmation that the emergence protocol is proceeding exactly on schedule. And every day I know that in 6 years, maybe less, Everything you know about the Commonwealth coastline is going to change forever. Let me tell you about the fog in Far Harbor. You surface dwellers think it is natural, some kind of radioactive weather pattern that has always been there. The children of Adam worship it as a gift from their god. The harbormen fear it as a force of nature. Neither group has any idea what they are actually dealing with. That fog is manufactured. Station 12 has been running atmospheric processors in the coastal shelf since 2077. Massive biomechanical filtration systems that pull minerals from seawater, process them through engineered algae cultures, and release the resulting compounds into the air as a dense, semi-breathable suspension. The fog serves three purposes. First, it is a testing ground for network atmospheric modification technology. We have been perfecting the formula for decades, adjusting the chemical composition to find the perfect balance between density, radiation, absorption, and biological compatibility. Second, it acts as a natural barrier that keeps surface populations from exploring the coastline too thoroughly. The deeper you go into the fog, the worse the radiation exposure, the more aggressive the creatures. It is a perfect defensive perimeter that costs us nothing to maintain. Third, and this is the part that should terrify you, it is slowly modifying the coastal ecosystem to be more compatible with network physiology. Network citizens are not exactly baseline human anymore. Generations of genetic modification, environmental adaptation, and selective breeding have created a subspecies. We have denser bone structure to handle deep pressure, modified hemoglobin that can extract oxygen from water as efficiently as from air, lung tissue that can process high carbon dioxide concentrations without damage, retinal modifications that let us see in near total darkness. We are still human, technically, but we are optimized for an environment that would kill you in minutes. The fog in Far Harbor is being gradually adjusted to match the atmospheric composition we are most comfortable breathing: higher nitrogen content, lower oxygen, trace amounts of sulfur compounds from the geothermal vents we are used to. In another 10 years, the fog will be dense enough and chemical composition altered enough that network citizens can operate in it for extended periods without breathing equipment. Surface dwellers will need gas masks just to survive. That is when Phase 3 begins. That is when we come ashore. I have seen the military training facilities at Station 3. They have been preparing for surface operations since before I was born. 8,000 soldiers trained in amphibious combat, equipped with exosuits that can operate underwater or on land, armed with weapon systems you cannot imagine, sonic disruptors that can liquefy internal organs from 30 meters, bioelectric harpoons that deliver enough voltage to stop a Deathclaw's heart, pressure grenades that create localized implosion fields. They have been waiting for decades. They are ready. But the military units are not even the scariest part. The scariest part is what they have been doing with the Mirelurks. Remember what I said about them being escaped bioweapons? That was the first generation. Crude, unstable, barely controlled. Station 9 has been working on Generation 7 Mirelurks for the past 20 years. These are not animals. These are biological machines with neural implants that let us control them remotely. Living weapons that breed on their own, spread naturally, and can be activated whenever we need them. You know all those Mirelurk nests along the coastline? All those breeding colonies from Maine to Virginia? We know where every single one is. We have been tracking them, monitoring their populations, managing their genetics through controlled breeding programs. When the emergence begins, we will activate the neural networks we have been embedding in the queens. Every Mirelurk nest within 50 kilometers of a target settlement will swarm simultaneously. While you are fighting the Mirelurks, our soldiers will come ashore. You will never see us coming. Think about what that means. Think about every coastal settlement you know: Far Harbor, Salem, the Castle, Spectacle Island, Coastal Cottage. All of them are within Mirelurk territory. All of them are surrounded by creatures that we can turn into an army with a single broadcast signal. The Institute had its synths. We have entire ecosystems weaponized and waiting for orders. I worked on the neural control systems myself. That is what finally made me sick enough to start questioning everything. I spent 3 months designing the genetic modifications that would make Mirelurk queens receptive to our broadcast frequencies. I coded the behavior patterns that would activate during combat mode: increased aggression, pack hunting, coordinated assault tactics. I made them into better killers, and I told myself it was for defensive purposes only, that we would never actually use them, that it was just contingency planning. Then I saw the deployment schedule. Station 9 was preparing to activate test populations in 2090, 3 years before the full emergence. They wanted to see how surface settlements would respond to coordinated Mirelurk attacks. They wanted combat data. They wanted to watch people die so they could refine their tactics. That is when I knew I could not be part of this anymore. That is when I started planning my escape. The oxygen scrubber on this vessel is rated for 45 days of continuous operation. I have been running for 183 days. You know how I am still breathing? I have been surfacing at night near abandoned coastal facilities, using portable atmospheric processors to refill the tanks. It is incredibly dangerous. Every time I surface, I risk detection. Every time I open the hatch, I risk network hunter drones spotting my thermal signature. But I do not have a choice. The alternative is suffocation. Last week, I surfaced near what used to be the Nakano residence. You know that place? Japanese family, ran a boat repair shop, had a daughter who disappeared. I know what happened to her. Kasumi Nakano. She thought she might be a synth. She went looking for answers and ended up at some settlement called Acadia. But before she left, she spent a lot of time on the docks at night. She saw things, strange lights in the water, shapes moving beneath the waves. She heard sounds, low-frequency vibrations that made her teeth ache. She saw our surveillance units. We have autonomous monitoring drones that patrol the coastal shelf, watching surface settlements, recording activity patterns. They are small, mostly organic, designed to look like large fish or debris if anyone spots. To them. Kasumi saw them and did not understand what she was looking at. She thought she was going crazy. She thought maybe she was not human because normal humans do not see things like that. The truth is, she was completely human. She was just observant enough to notice what we were doing. The Nakano family was on our watch list. They had too much maritime experience, too much knowledge of the local waters. If they had started exploring more aggressively, they might have found evidence of our operations. So we deployed infrasound emitters near their facility. Not enough to drive them violently insane, just enough to create persistent anxiety, paranoia, and family tension. Kasumi left because we made her want to leave. We fractured that family on purpose because they were getting too curious about the ocean. Here is something that will keep you up at night. How many times have you wondered why some settlements just seem cursed? Why certain locations have constant problems with violence, disappearances, inexplicable accidents? How many of those problems are actually natural, and how many are us? We have been running psychological warfare operations against surface settlements for 90 years. Anywhere near the coast, anywhere with deep water access, anywhere that might eventually develop the technology to explore the ocean depths, we have been actively sabotaging Point Lookout. That whole region is a nightmare, right? Constant violence, inbred swamp folk, mysterious cults, people going missing. You think that is all natural mutation and radiation exposure? Station 14 has been running cognitive disruption broadcasts in that area since 2100. We wanted to create a buffer zone of hostile territory that would discourage exploration of the Chesapeake Bay region. We succeeded. Point Lookout is now so dangerous that even the Brotherhood avoids it. The fog in Far Harbor is atmospheric modification. The violence in Point Lookout is neurological modification. The Mirelurk attacks everywhere are biological modification. We have been terraforming the coastline for a century, slowly making it uninhabitable for baseline humans and perfect for us. And you never even noticed because you thought it was all just wasteland problems. Just the natural consequences of nuclear war. It was not natural. It was us. Do you want to know the really sick part? The network genuinely believes they are helping. The Council of Stations, the governing body that coordinates all network operations. They have convinced themselves that surface dwellers are suffering, and the emergence protocol is a rescue operation. They look at the wasteland and see genetic damage, shortened lifespans, constant violence, resource scarcity. They see people struggling to survive in a hostile environment, and they decided the compassionate thing to do is replace you. The official policy statement, I have read it a dozen times, says that surface populations are biologically compromised beyond recovery. That radiation exposure over multiple generations has created irreversible genetic damage that will eventually lead to extinction. That the kindest thing the network can do is provide a clean transition to a superior genetic baseline. They are planning genocide, and they have convinced themselves it is mercy. I tried to argue against it. Before I ran, I presented research showing that surface populations were actually adapting successfully to wasteland conditions. That the mutations and changes were not degradation, they were evolution. That given time, surface humans might actually be more resilient than network citizens because they had survived conditions we could not handle. The council looked at my data and said I was displaying symptoms of surface sickness. They recommended I undergo cognitive restructuring to correct my maladaptive empathy. That is what they call it when you start seeing surface dwellers as people instead of obsolete. Genetic material, surface sickness, like it is a disease, like having compassion for anyone who is not. Network is a mental disorder that requires treatment. I have seen colleagues go through the restructuring process. They come back different, still functional, still brilliant at their jobs. But something is missing. The part that questions, the part that doubts, the part that feels guilt. All gone, replaced with absolute certainty that the network is right and everyone else is expendable. I refused treatment. I knew what it meant. I knew I would never be the same person afterward. So I started planning my escape, and I started stealing data. Security protocols, station locations, military deployment schedules, genetic engineering research, everything I could access without triggering security alerts. I spent 3 months slowly copying files to isolated data modules, hiding them in my quarters, preparing for the moment I would run. The hardest part was leaving people behind. I had friends at Station Echo, colleagues I had worked with for years, a partner I had been with for 8 years. I could not tell any of them what I was planning because they would have reported me immediately. Network conditioning is thorough. Loyalty to the stations comes before everything. Personal relationships, family bonds, individual conscience, all secondary to the collective mission. I knew if I told anyone, even people I trusted, they would turn me in because it is what they had been trained to do since birth. So I left without saying goodbye. I filed a standard research requisition for Vessel 47, claiming I needed to inspect some equipment at a remote monitoring station. I loaded my stolen data modules into a shielded compartment I had installed weeks earlier. I launched at 0300 hours when station traffic was minimal, and I ran. I have not spoken to another network citizen since. I have been alone for 6 months. Just me, this vessel, and the hunter drones that are always searching. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the Wasteland, hit that like button. It really motivates me to create similar Fallout lores. The isolation is worse than I expected. I have always been around people. Station Echo had 4,000 residents. You were never really alone. Always voices in the corridors, colleagues in the labs, friends in the common areas. Now there is just the hum of the engines, the ping of the sonar, the occasional proximity alarm when a hunter drone gets too close. I talk to myself constantly just to hear a human voice. I monitor surface broadcasts when I can. Radio signals travel surprisingly well through water if you know the right frequencies. I have been listening to the Commonwealth News networks, the Brotherhood tactical channels, even that nervous DJ from Diamond City. It is strange hearing about surface problems when I know what is waiting under the waves. You are worried about super mutants and raiders. You should be worried about the ocean. You should be building walls against the tide, not against each other. The Institute fell last year. I heard about it through the Brotherhood channels. Apparently some vault dweller from before the war showed up and either took control or destroyed the place, depending on which version of the story you believe. The network was relieved. We had been monitoring the Institute for decades, terrified they would trace our technology back to us. See, the Institute did not develop their teleportation system from scratch. They found it. In 2180, one of our transport pods malfunctioned during a cargo run between Station Echo and Station 3. The quantum navigation system failed, and instead of materializing at the target coordinates, it surfaced right off the coast of the Commonwealth. The Institute detected the energy signature immediately. They sent a team to investigate before we could retrieve it. By the time our recovery unit arrived, the pod was gone. The Institute had it. We monitored their research for the next 100 years. Watch them reverse engineer our quantum transport technology into their molecular relay system. They never figured out the full functionality. They could not crack the quantum entanglement protocols that make true point-to-point teleportation possible, but they got close enough to be dangerous. Close enough that if they had kept researching, they might have eventually traced the technology's signature back to its source, back to us. When the Institute fell, the Network Council actually debated launching a recovery operation. They wanted to send a team to secure the Institute's research data before the Brotherhood or Railroad got it. They decided against it because the risk of surface exposure was too high, but they assigned Station 6 to monitor the situation, make sure no one on the surface learns enough about molecular relay technology, start asking questions about where it originally came from. That is the thing about the network. We have been watching you for generations. Every major development in Wasteland society, every technological breakthrough, every political shift. We know about it. We track it. We analyze it for potential threats. The Brotherhood thinks they are the most advanced faction in the Wasteland. The Institute thought they were gods among mortals. Neither group has any idea how far behind they actually are. The technology gap between the network and surface factions is not years. It is not decades. It is centuries. We have quantum processors that can simulate entire ecosystems in real time. We have genetic engineering so precise we can program instincts into organisms before they are born. We have energy systems that violate half the laws of thermodynamics you think are universal. We have medical technology that can regrow entire limbs in a week. We have material science that can create substances with properties that should not exist. And we have had 200 years of completely uninterrupted research, unlimited resources, and no external threats to develop all of it. While you were fighting over water purification and salvaging old-world tech, we were inventing new physics. While you were trying to rebuild basic infrastructure, we were mapping the human genome so thoroughly we can predict personality traits from genetic markers. While you were celebrating the achievement of building working laser weapons, we were building living weapons that breed on their own and follow our commands. I am not telling you this to make you feel hopeless. I am telling you because you need to understand what is coming. The emergence will not be an invasion. It will be an extinction event. The network has the resources, the technology, and the absolute conviction that they are right. They will not negotiate. They will not compromise. They will come ashore, secure the territory they want, and eliminate anyone who resists. And they will do it believing they are helping. You cannot fight them with conventional weapons. You cannot outthink them with tactics. You cannot outlast them with determination. They are better equipped, better trained, and better prepared than any faction you have ever faced. The Brotherhood would be wiped out in a week. The Railroad would never see them coming. The Minutemen would not stand a chance. Even the Institute, at the height of its power, could not have stood against a full network assault. Your only chance is knowledge. If you know they are coming, if you know how they operate, if you know where they are vulnerable, maybe you can prepare. Maybe you can find a way to survive. That is why I am transmitting this. That is why I have been running for 6 months instead of just giving up. Because someone needs to know. Someone needs to warn the surface. Someone needs to have a chance. The hunter drones are getting closer. I detected 3 of them yesterday, running search patterns in overlapping grids. They are methodical, patient. They will narrow the search area until I have nowhere left to hide. I estimate I have maybe 2 weeks before they corner me. Maybe less if I get unlucky. I am going to keep transmitting until then. Keep documenting. Keep warning. Keep hoping that someone, somewhere, is listening. The data modules I stole contained something the network never wanted anyone to see. The complete genetic archives from every station, dating back to the founding in 2068, population records, breeding programs, experimental modifications, all of it. And buried in those files is the truth about what the network has become. We are not human anymore. Not really. We stopped being human about 3 generations ago, and we have been lying to ourselves about it ever since. Station 7 runs what they call the Genetic Preservation Initiative. Officially, it is supposed to maintain baseline, human DNA, in case we ever need to revert modifications. Unofficially, it is a museum. The last samples of unmodified human genetic material in the entire network, preserved in cryo storage like extinct species in a zoo, Every network citizen alive today is at least 40% modified from baseline human. Some of us are 60, 70%. We have been engineering ourselves for so long, we would not even register as the same species on a proper genetic analysis. And we did it on purpose. Generation by generation, the Council of Stations approved modifications they said would help us survive deep ocean pressure. Denser bones, modified hemoglobin, pressure-resistant cell walls. Then they approved modifications for improved cognitive function, enhanced neural plasticity, increased memory retention, faster processing speed. Then they approved modifications for longevity, telomere extension, cellular regeneration, reduced cancer susceptibility. Each modification made sense on its own. Together, they made us into something else. I was engineered before I was born. My parents submitted to the standard procreation protocols, genetic screening, compatibility analysis, modification recommendations. The Council approved 17 separate genetic alterations to my embryonic DNA before I was even viable. They removed predispositions to certain diseases. They enhanced my aptitude for spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. They modified my lung capacity and pressure tolerance. By the time I was born, I was already more than my parents' child. I was a network-optimized organism designed for life underwater. Every network citizen goes through this. We do not have children naturally. We have biological engineering projects that happen to result in offspring. The Council reviews every genetic profile, approves every modification, monitors every pregnancy. They call it responsible reproduction. I call it eugenics. We have been practicing systematic genetic modification on our entire population for 4 generations, and we have convinced ourselves it is progress. Here is what that means in practice. I am stronger than any surface human my size. I can hold my breath for 11 minutes without discomfort. I can see perfectly in near darkness. I can hear frequencies most people cannot detect. My bones can handle pressure that would crush an unmodified human into paste. I can process toxins and radiation at levels that would kill you in hours. I am objectively superior to baseline humans in almost every measurable way. And that is exactly the problem. The network has spent so long making ourselves better, we have forgotten how to see anyone else as equals. When you are genetically engineered to be superior, when you grow up surrounded by technology that surface dwellers cannot even comprehend, when you live in a society that has solved problems the Wasteland is still struggling with, it becomes very easy to see surface populations as lesser, as obsolete, as genetic dead ends that nature should have eliminated already. The Council did not start out planning genocide. They started out believing they were the only humans with a real future, that their genetic modifications made them the true inheritors of humanity, that everyone else was damaged, degraded, slowly dying from radiation exposure and environmental toxins. It was not hate, it was pity, which somehow made it worse. They looked at surface dwellers and saw suffering animals that needed to be put down for their own good. I have read the Council proceedings from 2060 through 2087. Watch the language slowly shift. In 2060, they talked about eventual cooperation with surface survivors. By 2070, they talked about managing surface populations. By 2080, they talked about replacing surface populations. By 2090, they talked about surface populations the way you talk about invasive species. Problems to be controlled, threats to be eliminated, obstacles to be removed, and every step of the way, they had scientific justification, genetic analysis showing radiation damage, longevity studies showing reduced lifespans, cognitive assessments showing decreased intelligence. They built an entire scientific framework to prove that surface humans were biologically inferior. Never mind that you survived a nuclear apocalypse. Never mind that you rebuilt civilization from radioactive rubble. Never mind that you adapted to an environment that would kill us in days. You were inferior because our metrics said so. I used to believe it. That is the worst part. I grew up learning that surface dwellers were genetically compromised, that they had shorter lifespans because of accumulated mutations, that they were more violent because radiation damaged their neural chemistry. I believed it because everyone I knew believed it, because all the data supported it, because questioning it meant questioning the entire foundation of network society. Then I actually met surface dwellers, not as research subjects, not through surveillance footage. I met them, talked to them, listened to their stories, and I realized the Council's data was not wrong exactly, but it was missing the point. Yes, surface humans have shorter lifespans on average. They also have stronger immune systems because they survive diseases that would devastate the network. Yes, they show higher aggression levels. They also show higher stress tolerance because they deal with constant threats we never face. Yes, they have accumulated genetic mutations. Those mutations let them survive in conditions we cannot handle without equipment. They are not inferior, they are differently adapted. And the network cannot accept that because it undermines the entire justification for the emergence protocol. If surface humans are not obsolete, then replacing them is not mercy, it is murder. And the network has invested too much, planned too long, and modified themselves too far to accept that they might be the villains in this story. The stations have been preparing for the emergence for 90 years. They have built the infrastructure, trained the soldiers, engineered the weapons, conditioned the population to believe it is necessary. The economic investment alone is staggering. Millions of man-hours, entire research divisions dedicated to surface operations, military budgets that dwarf everything else combined. They cannot back down now. They have gone too far to stop, even if they wanted to. And here is the thing that keeps me awake during the brief periods when I allow myself to sleep. I do not think they want to stop. I think part of the Council, maybe most of it, actually wants the emergence to happen. Not because they believe surface humans are suffering, because they want the land, they want the resources. They want to prove that the network is superior in every way that matters. They want to come ashore as conquerors and remake the surface world in their image. The stations are crowded, 20 million people living in pressurized habitats designed for 15 million maximum. We have been managing population growth for decades through strict breeding protocols, but the pressure keeps building, literally and figuratively. Living at depth, in sealed environments, with recycled everything, it creates psychological stress. People start getting agitated, claustrophobic, aggressive. The Council has been using pharmaceutical management to control it, but drugs only work for so long. The surface represents release, unlimited space, fresh air, natural light, things we have not had in 200 years. The Council has been showing propaganda footage of coastal territories for decades. Beautiful coastlines, empty beaches, pristine forests. All yours, they say, all waiting for you, just as soon as we clear away the current residents. And the population believes it because they want to believe it, because they are tired of living in metal tubes under crushing pressure, because they want something better for their children. I have seen the psychological assessments. Station populations are showing increased rates of what they call environmental fatigue syndrome, depression, anxiety, reduced productivity. The medical divisions prescribe medication and recommend patience. But the real cure is getting out, and the only way out is up. The emergence is not just military strategy anymore. It is pressure relief, a safety valve for a society that has been sealed underground for too long. That is why I know they will not stop. Even if I somehow convince the Council that surface humans deserve to live, even if I could prove that the emergence is genocide rather than mercy, it would not matter. The network needs the surface, not wants, needs. The alternative is social collapse. 20 million people slowly going insane from confinement. The Council knows this. They factored it into their planning. The emergence is not optional anymore. It is survival, ours or yours. The hunter drones nearly found me yesterday. I was running silent through a thermal layer near the mid-Atlantic ridge when my passive sonar picked up their signature, 3 units, running a triangulation pattern, closing on my position. I had maybe 10 minutes before they would be close enough for active scanning. Once they got a solid lock, it would be over. They would coordinate, box me in, and either capture or destroy the vessel. I did something desperate. I found a hydrothermal vent, one of the superheated water columns that rise from the ocean floor where tectonic plates meet. Temperatures exceed 400 degrees Celsius, enough to cook anything organic in seconds. But the thermal noise also blinds most sensors. I took the vessel directly into the column, pushed the hull tolerance to maximum, and prayed the heat shielding would hold long enough for the drones to lose my signature. The interior temperature spiked to 48 degrees. Coolant systems screamed warnings. Hull stress indicators went critical. I could smell insulation burning, but I held position for 7 minutes While the drones swept past, their sensors overwhelmed by the thermal interference. When I finally limped out of the column, half my systems were damaged and I was running on emergency power. But I was alive, and they had moved on. That is the second time I have used thermal vents to evade detection. It will not work many more times. The hunter drones are learning. Their search patterns are getting smarter. They are starting to check thermal anomalies instead of just avoiding them. Eventually, they will predict what I am going to do before I do it. That is what they were designed for. Adaptive pursuit. They get better at hunting me every time I evade them. I have been thinking about the Institute's teleportation technology again. The fact that they reverse engineered it from our transport pod. If the Brotherhood or Railroad recovered the Institute's research data, if they found the original network components embedded in the molecular relay systems, would they understand what they were looking at? Would they ask the right questions? Would they realize the technology did not originate on the surface? Probably not. Surface factions do not think about underwater civilizations. Why would they? As far as Wasteland history is concerned, everything important happened on land. The bombs fell on cities. The vaults preserved people underground. The survivors fought for surface resources. The ocean is just empty space full of radiation and mutated crabs. The idea that there might be advanced technological societies operating at depth, completely independent of surface civilization, it is too far outside the normal frame of reference. That is the network's greatest advantage. Invisibility through irrelevance. Surface factions do not look for us because they do not imagine we could exist, and we have worked very hard to maintain that illusion. Every time someone gets too curious about the ocean, we deploy countermeasures, infrasound to induce paranoia, biological threats to discourage exploration, mysterious disappearances to create fear. We have made the coastline dangerous enough that people avoid deep water naturally, the Red Death legend in Far Harbor. You know about that? Local superstition about a massive sea creature that sinks ships and drags people into the depths. Completely false. There is no Red Death. There is Station 12's Coastal Interdiction Unit, a semi-organic submarine with bioluminescent camouflage and a resonance weapon that can disable boat engines. It has been sinking curious vessels in Far Harbor waters for 30 years. The locals created the Red Death mythology to explain what they could not understand. We did the same thing in Point Lookout, created the Mother of the Fog legend. Locals think she is some kind of spirit or hermit who guides people through the radiation. Actually, she is Senior Field Agent Yuki Kimura from Station 14. She has been running surveillance and interference operations in the Point Lookout region since 2078. When the children of Adam arrived and started worshipping the fog we created, Yuki decided to use their beliefs. She appears to them occasionally, guides them away from sensitive areas, reinforces their faith in the fog as divine. It is psychological manipulation disguised as religious experience. The network has dozens of surface operatives like Yuki, people who have been modified for extended land operations, embedded in coastal communities, gathering intelligence and running interference. Some of them have been topside for decades. They age slower than baseline humans because of genetic modifications. They resist radiation better. They heal faster. They can pass as surface dwellers long enough to accomplish their missions. How many people have you met in coastal settlements who seemed a little too healthy, who survived things that should have killed them, who knew things they should not know? Some of them might be network operatives. We have eyes everywhere near the water, listening posts disguised as fishing boats, surveillance drones that look like debris, data collection networks hidden in abandoned coastal facilities. We have been watching you for generations, and you never knew. I used to think that was clever. Strategic invisibility, maintaining operational security through cultural camouflage. Now I see it for what it really is: predatory stalking. We have been studying surface populations the way scientists study animals before a hunting season, learning behavior patterns, identifying weaknesses, planning optimal approach vectors. The entire surveillance apparatus was never about defense. It was always about preparation for conquest. The files I stole include complete dossiers on every major surface faction: the Brotherhood of Steel, the Railroad, the Minutemen, what remains of the Institute, even smaller groups like the Atom Cats and the Triggermen. We have threat assessments, technological capability analyses, leadership profiles, tactical vulnerabilities. Everything you would need to plan a coordinated assault on multiple targets simultaneously. The Brotherhood analysis is particularly detailed. We have been tracking them since they first appeared in the Commonwealth, counted their soldiers, mapped their supply lines, identified their power armor variants, analyzed their tactical doctrine. The assessment concludes they represent the most significant military threat among surface factions. Recommendation is to neutralize them first, using electromagnetic pulse weapons to disable their power armor and vertibirds simultaneously, followed by biological agents targeting their concentrated population centers. The railroad assessment is almost dismissive. Small numbers, limited resources, dependent on secrecy. Recommendation is to ignore them initially, let them continue their synth liberation operations, then round up all known members in a single coordinated sweep once the emergence is underway. They pose minimal strategic threat. The Minutemen assessment is more interesting. Decentralized leadership, settlement-based structure, adaptable tactics. Recommendation is to co-opt them rather than eliminate them. Deploy network operatives to key settlements, gradually assume leadership positions, redirect Minutemen resources toward objectives that benefit the emergence, turn them into unwitting collaborators. Every faction has been analyzed, every group has been assessed, every potential threat has been cataloged and assigned a response protocol. The network has spent decades planning this operation down to the smallest detail. They know exactly what they are going to do, how they are going to do it, and what the expected outcome is. Surface factions do not stand a chance, because they do not even know the fight is coming. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently, if I had raised objections earlier, if I had tried to change things from inside instead of running, if I had gathered more evidence, convinced more people, built a movement instead of becoming a fugitive. Would it have mattered? Or would they have just restructured me years ago, before I could become a real problem? I do not think I could have changed anything. The network is too big, too entrenched, too committed to the emergence. This is not one corrupt leader or one bad policy. This is an entire civilization that has convinced itself that genocide is justified. You cannot fix that by filing reports or appealing to ethics committees. You cannot reform a system that is fundamentally built on the premise that some lives matter more than others. So I ran, and I stole data, and I am broadcasting everything I know, hoping someone will listen, hoping someone will believe, hoping that maybe, just maybe, surface factions will have enough warning to prepare, to build defenses, to create countermeasures, to survive what is coming. The oxygen is getting low again. I need to surface soon, refill the tanks, recharge the power cells. Every time I surface, I risk detection. But I do not have a choice. Not if I want to keep transmitting. Not if I want to finish documenting everything I know before the hunter drones find me. I have been calculating probabilities, given their search patterns, their adaptive algorithms, and the limited area I can operate in without surfacing more frequently. I estimate I have 8 to 12 days before they corner me, maybe less. Once they have me, they will retrieve the vessel, recover the stolen data, and eliminate me, probably cognitive restructuring first, to extract any information I have not documented. Then, permanent termination. The network does not tolerate traitors, but they will not get the data. I have encoded it with quantum encryption and distributed it across multiple physical modules. If the vessel is recovered, the security protocols will trigger. The modules will disperse via autonomous delivery mechanisms. Some will sink to the ocean floor in shielded containers. Some will surface and drift with the currents. Some will be ejected toward coastal areas with active transponders. The network might recover some of them, but they will not get all of them, and they only need to miss one for this information to reach the surface. I have done everything I can, documented the station locations, recorded the emergence timeline, explained the technology, detailed the tactics, listed the vulnerabilities. If someone finds this information, if someone acts on it, maybe the surface has a chance. Maybe you can prepare, maybe you can survive, or maybe I have wasted 6 months running, and all of this will end with my death and nothing changing. Maybe the network will come ashore in 2093, exactly as planned, and surface populations will be caught completely by surprise. Maybe in 50 years, there will be no baseline humans left, just network citizens, living on land and sea, convinced they saved humanity by destroying it. I do not know anymore. I am tired, scared, running out of time and options. But I am still transmitting, still documenting, still hoping, because that is all I have left. The hope that maybe, somewhere, someone is listening, someone who can do what I could not. Stop what is coming. Save the people the network has decided are expendable. The hunter drones are close again. I can feel them tightening the search grid. Soon, very soon, they will find me, and this will all be over. But until then, I will keep talking, keep transmitting, keep fighting the only way I know how. With truth, with evidence, with the desperate hope that knowledge can be a weapon when nothing else will work. The depths are full of cities and nightmares, and they are coming up. 6 years. That is all the time you have left. 6 years to prepare for something you do not know is coming. 6 years before the ocean rises up and takes everything you have. I hope this warning reaches you in time. I hope you believe it. I hope you survive, because I will not. The containment breach happened 3 days ago. I did not mention it before because I was hoping I could fix it, but I cannot. The cooling system for the reactor compartment failed during my last thermal vent evasion. I have been running on emergency power since then, trying to route enough energy to life support without triggering a cascade failure. It is not working. The reactor is overheating, slowly but steadily. I estimate I have 72 hours before it reaches critical temperature, and I have to do an emergency shutdown. Once that happens, I lose propulsion, life support, and any chance of outrunning the hunter drones. So this is it. My last transmission, the final confession of someone who tried to do the right thing and failed. I want to make sure I tell you everything that matters before the end, starting with the truth about who I really am and why I know so much about network surface operations. My name is not actually Yuki Tanaka. That was my birth designation at Station 7 before I was transferred to Echo. My operational designation, the name I used during my surface assignments, was Yuki Kimura. Some of you might recognize that name if you have been paying attention to Far Harbor folklore, the Mother of the Fog. That was me. For 15 years, I operated topside in the Point Lookout and Far Harbor regions, running surveillance and interference operations, while disguised as a mysterious hermit who guided the children of Adam. I was never supposed to question my mission. Network operatives are conditioned from childhood to see surface duty as the highest honor. You get selected based on genetic compatibility, psychological resilience, and tactical aptitude. You undergo years of training, physical conditioning to handle surface gravity and atmospheric pressure, cultural education to blend with wasteland populations, combat training for worst-case scenarios. By the time you deploy, you are a perfect instrument. No doubts, no hesitation, complete commitment to network objectives. I spent 5 years embedded in Point Lookout, watching the local population destroy themselves with the help of our infrasound broadcasts. I documented the violence, the paranoia, the tribal degeneration. I filed reports describing how effectively our cognitive disruption technology was creating a hostile buffer zone, and I felt nothing, because I had been trained to see surface dwellers as research subjects, not people. They were data points in a strategic assessment, variables in an operational equation, not humans whose lives I was helping to destroy. Then I was reassigned to Far Harbor, different mission parameters. Instead of passive observation, I was supposed to actively manipulate the children of Adam, use their faith in the radioactive fog to guide them away from sensitive areas, reinforce their belief that the fog was divine, make sure they remained hostile to the harbormen, so both groups stayed focused on each other instead of exploring the deeper waters where our atmospheric processors were running. I appeared to them during their pilgrimage after they were exiled from Far Harbor, manifested out of the fog wearing modified clothing that looked appropriately mysterious. Led them to the old submarine base that Dima was occupying. Let them interpret my guidance as divine intervention. It worked perfectly. They named me the Mother of the Fog, incorporated me into their theology, and started building shrines in my honor. Mission success. Operational parameters exceeded, but something went wrong, or maybe something went right, depending on your perspective. I started listening to them, not as an operative gathering intelligence, as a person hearing other people talk about their lives, their hopes, their fears, their faith in something larger than survival. The children of Adam believed the radiation was transforming them into something better. They were wrong about the mechanism, but they were not wrong about the principle. They were adapting, evolving, becoming something new, and I realized they were doing exactly what the network had done, changing themselves to survive in an environment that should have killed them. The difference was, they did not have genetic engineering or advanced technology. They just had faith and determination. And it was working. They were thriving in levels of radiation that would have required network citizens to use protective equipment. They had found their own path to adaptation, and it was just as valid as ours. That was when the surface sickness started, when I began seeing them as equals instead of subjects, when I started questioning whether the network had the right to determine who deserved to survive. I tried to suppress it, told myself I was experiencing temporary psychological displacement from extended surface exposure, but the doubts kept growing. Every time I appeared to the children, every time I guided them, every time I saw their genuine gratitude and faith, I felt worse about what I was doing. The final break came when I met Confessor Martin. He was different from the other children, thoughtful, questioning. He actually cared about the people in Far Harbor, even though they had exiled his congregation. He kept trying to find peaceful solutions, kept hoping for reconciliation, and I watched the network's operations slowly destroy him. The infrasound broadcasts that increased tensions between Far Harbor and the nucleus, the fog that kept expanding, making both groups more desperate, the sabotage operations against the fog condensers that Dime was providing to protect the harbormen. We were deliberately escalating the conflict, making sure both sides stayed hostile. And Martin was caught in the middle, trying to prevent violence that we were actively engineering. I saw him lose faith, watched his certainty crumble as he realized Adam was not protecting his people. They were just dying slower than the harbormen. He disappeared one night, walked away from everything he believed because the cognitive dissonance became unbearable. I understood exactly how he felt, because I was experiencing the same thing. My training said surface dwellers were genetically inferior. My observations showed they were successfully adapted. My conditioning said the emergence was mercy. My conscience said it was murder. I could not reconcile the contradiction. So I did what Martin did. I walked away. I returned to Station Echo and requested immediate reassignment to deep research. No more surface operations. No more contact with wasteland populations. Just lab work where I could focus on science instead of ethics. They approved the request, but flagged me for psychological evaluation. 3 months later, I was diagnosed with surface sickness and recommended for cognitive restructuring. That was when I knew I had to run. The irony is, I became exactly what the network feared, a surface operative who went native, who started identifying with the target population instead of the mission. It happens sometimes. Despite all the conditioning, they have protocols for it: immediate recall, psychological intervention, memory editing if necessary. They cannot afford to have operatives questioning the fundamental premise of network superiority. It undermines everything. So here I am, former network operative, diagnosed traitor, fugitive from the only civilization I have ever known, running from hunter drones in a stolen research vessel with a failing reactor and maybe 2 days of life support remaining. Not exactly the glorious career I imagined when I graduated from the Tactical Academy, but I do not regret it. I would rather die out here, alone, having tried to warn the surface, than live another day as a complicit participant in genocide, even if no one believes this transmission, even if all this data gets recovered by the network and destroyed, even if the emergence happens exactly as planned and everyone I tried to save dies anyway. At least I tried. At least I chose conscience over conditioning. At least I was human enough to refuse. The hunter drones have found me. I am picking up multiple signatures converging on my position. They have boxed me in against the mid-Atlantic ridge with nowhere left to run. I could try another thermal vent evasion, but the reactor cannot handle the stress. The coolant system is already compromised. One more spike, and I will have a meltdown instead of a controlled shutdown. So this is where it ends. I'm going to set the vessel to surface automatically in 6 hours, regardless of what happens to me. The data modules will eject toward multiple coastal locations. Some will sink to the ocean floor in shielded containers. Some will surface and drift with the currents. Some will be ejected toward coastal areas with active transponders. The network will recover some of them, but the dispersal pattern makes it statistically impossible to retrieve all of them. At least one should reach the surface intact. If you are hearing this, if you found one of the modules, if you believe any part of what I have told you, please act on it. Share this information. Warn the coastal settlements. Contact the Brotherhood, the Railroad, whoever will listen. Show them the station coordinates, the technology specifications, the emergence timeline. Give the surface a fighting chance. And if you cannot stop the emergence, at least survive it. Move inland. Abandon the coastlines. Build defenses against biological weapons and sonic attacks. Watch for the fog. When it starts spreading faster than normal, when it becomes too thick to see through, when people start getting sick from exposure, that is the beginning. That is phase 2 accelerating. You will have maybe 6 months before phase 3 starts. Use that time to prepare. The hunter drones are deploying. I can see them on sonar. 6 units, surrounding the vessel in a perfect hexagonal formation. They are not attacking yet. They are waiting to see if I will surrender. The network prefers to recover rogue operatives alive when possible. They want the intelligence I gathered during my surface operations. They want to know who I contacted, what I revealed, whether I compromised any other operations. They want to restructure me and put me back to work. I am not giving them that satisfaction. I have already purged my personal memory banks, deleted the tactical intelligence, erased the contact lists, scrambled the operational codes. Everything I know that could hurt surface populations is gone. All that remains is what I recorded in the data modules, and those are encrypted with quantum keys. The network will take years to crack. By the time they access the information, the emergence will have already started. The intelligence will be obsolete. I am initiating emergency protocols now, flooding the reactor compartment, overloading the power cells, triggering the data module dispersal sequence. The vessel will breach the surface in approximately 5 hours, 43 minutes. By then, I will be gone. The hunter drones will recover the wreckage, but they will not recover me. I am making sure of that. To everyone in the coastal settlements, from Maine to Virginia, from the Commonwealth to Point Lookout, the ocean is not empty. The deep water is full of people who have been watching you for generations. They have technology you cannot imagine. They have weapons you cannot fight. They have absolute conviction that they are justified in taking everything you have, and they are coming. 6 years, maybe less. Prepare. Survive. Prove them wrong about you being obsolete. To the network, if you are monitoring this transmission, I know you are out there, listening, analyzing, tracking. I want you to know that I do not hate you. I understand why you believe what you believe. Generations of isolation and genetic modification have made you forget what it means to be human. You look at surface dwellers and see inferior genetics. I see successful adaptation to impossible conditions. You see people who should be replaced. I see people who earned their survival through centuries of struggle. You are not superior. You are just different. And different does not give you the right to commit genocide. To Confessor Martin, if you are still alive, still wandering the wasteland, still searching for meaning after your faith collapsed, you were right to walk away. Your doubts were not weakness. They were the last remnant of your humanity, fighting against the conditioning. I hope you found peace. I hope you found purpose. I hope you survived losing everything you believed in, because I am about to do the same thing, and I need to believe it is possible to come out the other side intact. To the children of Adam in Far Harbor, the mother of the fog was never divine. She was a spy, a manipulator, an operative using your faith to control you. I am sorry for that. But your faith itself, your belief in transformation through division, in change through destruction, in rebirth through Adam's glow, that is real. You found truth, even if I was lying. The fog is not Adam's veil, but your ability to survive in it, to thrive in conditions that kill others, that is proof that humanity is not finished evolving. Keep adapting, keep surviving. You are stronger than the network thinks. If this confession meant something to you, leave a like. It is the only way I know you liked the video. I have been transmitting for 6 months, broadcasting everything I know, everything I learned, everything I stole. This is my last entry, my final testimony, the ending of Dr. Yuki Tanaka's story, and maybe the beginning of the surface's preparation for what is coming. The hunter drones are moving in. I can hear their propulsion systems through the hull. Any moment now, they will attempt contact, demand my surrender, offer terms for peaceful recovery. I am not responding. Let them interpret my silence however they want. Let them report back to Station Command that their rogue operative chose death over capture. Let them wonder what I revealed before the end. The reactor is approaching critical temperature. The automatic safety systems are failing exactly as I designed them to. In approximately 4 minutes, the containment vessel will rupture. The resulting explosion will not be nuclear, but it will be sufficient to destroy the vessel and everything in it, including me. The hunter drones are too close. The blast radius will probably damage several of them. Good. I want them to know there was a cost, that resistance is possible, that not everyone in the network accepts the emergence as inevitable. I am not afraid. I thought I would be, but I am not. I have done everything I can, warned everyone I could reach, preserved the knowledge that might save lives, chose conscience over survival. That is enough. That has to be enough. The rest is up to you. To the Wasteland, to the Commonwealth, to every coastal settlement that does not know what is waiting beneath the waves. I tried. I hope it was enough. I hope you survive what is coming. I hope you prove the network wrong about everything. I hope humanity's future belongs to the people who earned it through struggle, not the people who engineered it in a laboratory. The reactor has breached containment. I have maybe 60 seconds. The data modules are away. The surface protocols are engaged. The vessel will breach in 5 hours and 37 minutes. Everything I know is encoded and dispersed. Everything I could do is done. My name is Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Network Operative Designation Yuki Kimura. I was the mother of the fog. I was a spy, a manipulator, a tool of the emergence protocol, and in the end, I was human enough to refuse. That is my testimony. That is my confession. That is my warning to the surface world. The depths are full of cities and nightmares, and they are coming up. Remember this. Prepare, survive, tell them I tried.